Please subscribe, hit the like button, and let us know in the comments where you are watching from. My name is Julia Morrison, and I was in a coma for 8 months after a car accident. When I woke, my identical twin sister Rachel had taken over my identity, completely living in my apartment, working my job, and married to my fiancé Daniel with my engagement ring on her finger. I woke up in a hospital room I didn't recognize, and a doctor was calling me by the wrong name. Rachel, can you hear me? Rachel Morrison, you're in County General Hospital. You've been in a medically induced coma for 8 months. My voice came out raspy, unfamiliar. I'm Julia, not Rachel. The doctor exchanged glances with the nurse. You're Rachel Morrison. You were admitted after a severe car accident. Your sister Julia has been visiting regularly, handling your affairs while you've been unconscious. My sister Julia, but I was Julia. Rachel was my twin sister. Check my ID, I said. Check my fingerprints. I'm Julia Morrison, not Rachel. The doctor looked uncomfortable. Your identification when you were admitted said Rachel Morrison. Your sister Julia has been listed as your emergency contact and next of kin. They'd switched our identities. Rachel had somehow convinced everyone that I was her. Over the next few days, I tried to explain the situation to hospital staff. They treated me like I had memory issues from the coma, brought in neurologists to evaluate my cognition, and suggested I was confused about my identity due to brain trauma. But I knew who I was. I had memories Rachel couldn't fake, childhood experiences only I had, knowledge of my career as a software engineer, and details about my relationship with my fiancé, Daniel. When Rachel finally visited, she came alone, closing the hospital room door behind her with a smile that made my blood run cold. How are you feeling? She asked, sitting in the visitor's chair like she had every right to be there. Why did you tell everyone I'm you? Why am I listed as Rachel? Rachel's smile didn't waver. Because that's who you are now. You're Rachel Morrison, recovered from a tragic accident. I'm Julia Morrison, living your life. This is insane. You can't steal someone's identity. I didn't steal anything. I simply stepped into a life that was empty while you were unconscious. And I've been doing quite well with it. Your job at tech, I've been excelling there. Your apartment, beautifully maintained. Your fiancé Daniel. She held up her left hand, showing my engagement ring. We got married 3 months ago. It was a beautiful ceremony. I felt like I'd been punched. Daniel married you, thinking you were me. Of course, we're identical twins, Julia, or should I say Rachel. No one can tell us apart. I just became you, and everyone accepted it. Daniel had no idea. Neither did your friends, your coworkers, anyone. But why? Why would you do this? Rachel's expression hardened. Because you had everything I wanted. The successful career I couldn't achieve. The perfect fiancé I never found. The life I deserved but never got because you were always the favorite. The successful one. The one everyone loved. When you had that accident, I saw an opportunity. So I took it. I'll tell everyone. I'll prove who I really am. No one will believe you. You've been in a coma for 8 months with documented brain trauma. You're confused about your identity. That's what the doctors will say. Meanwhile, I have 8 months of living as Julia Morrison. Bank accounts, work records, and a marriage certificate. Every piece of documentation says, I'm Julia, you're Rachel, the troubled twin with a history of mental health issues. I don't have mental health issues. You do now. I made sure of it. Created medical records, therapy notes, and documentation of your struggles. If you try to claim you're Julia, people will think Rachel is having a psychotic break. They'll probably commit you to psychiatric care. Rachel stood up, smoothing her dress, my dress, one I'd bought for a work event months ago. I'm keeping your life, Julia, or Rachel, I should say. Get used to your new identity, because fighting it will only make you look insane. She left, and I sat there in stunned horror, realizing my twin sister had systematically erased me and stolen everything I'd built. I was discharged from the hospital 2 weeks later, as Rachel Morrison into a rehab facility Rachel had arranged, supposedly to help me recover. But the facility wasn't medical, it was psychiatric. Rachel had me committed to a mental health facility, using the doctor's concerns about my identity confusion to have me institutionalized. Your sister thought this was the best place for your recovery, the admitting psychiatrist said, given your trauma and the identity issues you're experiencing. I was trapped. Every attempt to explain who I really was made me sound delusional. The more I insisted I was Julia, the more the staff believed I needed psychiatric treatment. Rachel visited once, her expression sympathetic but her eyes cold. "I'm worried about you," she said loudly enough for the staff to hear. "This identity confusion is serious, but we'll get you help." When we were alone, she leaned close. "Stop fighting this. Accept that you're Rachel now. If you cooperate, I'll make sure you're comfortable. If you keep insisting you're Julia, you'll spend years in psychiatric care." I had to escape, had to prove who I really was. I pretended to improve, told therapists I was accepting my identity as Rachel, and played the compliant patient. After 6 weeks, they released me to a supervised living facility with regular psychiatric check-ins. Rachel had arranged everything yet. Small apartment in a bad neighborhood, a minimum wage job, a completely different life than I'd had before. Rachel's life, she'd called it, with cruel irony. But being released gave me something I hadn't had in the psychiatric facility: freedom to investigate and gather evidence. I hired a private investigator with the small amount of money I had access to, Patricia Reeves, who specialized in identity theft cases. "This is one of the most elaborate identity thefts I've ever seen," Patricia said after hearing my story, "but identical twins make it uniquely difficult. If your sister looks exactly like you and has been living as you for 8 months, proving you're the real Julia will require substantial evidence." "What kind of evidence?" "DNA won't help you're identical. Fingerprints won't help you twins. They're too similar. We need documentation, behavioral evidence, proof that your sister couldn't know certain things or couldn't perform certain skills that you have." Patricia investigated Rachel's history. What she found was disturbing. Rachel had been planning this for years. She'd struggled professionally and personally while watching me succeed. She'd researched identity theft, studied how identical twins could exploit their similarity, apparently waiting for an opportunity. My car accident had provided it. Rachel had been at the scene. Our parents told me later she'd been in the car with me when we crashed, though she'd been uninjured. But Patricia discovered Rachel had been driving, had caused the accident deliberately, hoping I'd die. When I survived but ended up in a coma, she'd improvised, switched our identities at the hospital, used the chaos to establish herself as Julia while I was unconscious. Patricia helped me gather evidence proving I was the real Julia. We documented my technical knowledge that Rachel couldn't fake. I solved complex coding problems that my company had been working on, problems only the real Julia would know how to solve. Patricia recorded everything. We tracked down old college professors who could testify about my academic achievements in computer science, a field Rachel had never studied, retrieved academic records showing my degree, my transcripts, and my thesis. We found childhood friends who could identify subtle differences between Rachel and me: a small scar on my knee from a bike accident Rachel wasn't present for, and knowledge of events only I experienced. But the strongest evidence came from Daniel, my fiancé, or rather, from what Daniel didn't know. Patricia arranged for me to observe Daniel and Rachel from a distance. I watched them together, saw how they interacted. Rachel was playing a role, but she couldn't fully replicate our relationship. I contacted Daniel secretly, claiming to be someone investigating identity theft, showed him photos of Rachel and me from childhood, asked him questions about his wife Julia that only I would know the real answers to. Daniel realized something was wrong when he couldn't answer basic questions about our relationship that Rachel had apparently never told him. When he confronted Julia about it, Rachel made excuses, claimed he was misremembering. That's when I revealed myself to Daniel, explained everything: the switched identities, the stolen life, Rachel's calculated deception. Daniel was devastated. "I've been married to the wrong person for 3 months. Rachel has been pretending to be me. She looks like me, but she's not me. You married an imposter. How do I know you're really Julia? You look exactly like her." I told him things only Julia would know: intimate moments from our relationship, private jokes, details about our first date that Rachel couldn't have known because she wasn't there, details I'd never shared with anyone. Daniel broke down. "It is you." I knew something was off, but I couldn't figure out what. "She was different, subtly wrong in ways I couldn't identify. I thought it was stress from your recovery. She stole my life, and I'm going to take it back." With Daniel's help and Patricia's evidence, I filed a lawsuit for identity theft and fraud. The case was unprecedented: an identical twin stealing the sister's identity. while she was comatose. It made national news. Rachel fought back viciously. Her lawyers argued that Rachel was experiencing identity confusion, that the real Julia was living her life successfully. They presented 8 months of documentation, work records, bank transactions, and Daniel's testimony that he'd been married to Julia for months. But we had stronger evidence. Daniel testified about the differences he'd noticed, the things Julia couldn't remember about their relationship. My colleagues from TechCore testified about the technical knowledge, the current Julia lacked the problems Rachel couldn't solve that I solved easily. We presented academic records, childhood documentation, and testimony from people who knew subtle differences between Rachel and me. The turning point came when we found Rachel's computer files from before my accident, searches about how to steal identity, pretending to be an identical twin, and what happens to bank accounts when someone is in a coma. Rachel had been planning this, waiting for an opportunity. My accident had been that opportunity, and Patricia's investigation suggested Rachel had caused it deliberately. The judge ordered DNA testing, not to prove we were twins, we obviously were, but to match against it. Samples from my apartment, my work desk, my belongings from before the accident. The testing showed I was the person who'd lived there, whose DNA matched personal items Julia wouldn't have had access to. The judge ruled in my favor. Rachel was ordered to return everything: my identity, my apartment, my bank accounts, my job. The marriage to Daniel was annulled, based on fraud. He'd married someone under pretenses, believing she was me. But I wasn't satisfied with just a legal victory. Rachel had stolen 8 months of my life, married my fiancé, damaged my career, and tried to have me committed to psychiatric care. I wanted her destroyed. Rachel was criminally charged with identity theft, fraud, and conspiracy, but I pushed prosecutors to add more charges. Attempted murder for deliberately causing the car accident that put me in a coma. Patricia's investigation had found evidence brake tampering on my car, searches on Rachel's computer about how to cause a car accident, testimony from a mechanic who'd seen Rachel near my car the day before the crash. Rachel was convicted on all counts. The judge sentenced her to 25 years in prison with no possibility of parole for 15 years. But legal consequences weren't enough. I wanted Rachel to experience what she'd tried to do to me: complete loss of identity. I filed civil suits for damages: the 8 months of my life stolen, the trauma of waking to find my identity erased, the psychological harm of being institutionalized. Won judgments totaling $2.3 million that Rachel would never be able to pay. I also did something darker. I contacted every person Rachel had ever known, friends, colleagues, romantic interests, and told them what she'd done, provided documentation, trial transcripts, and media coverage. I wanted everyone who'd ever cared about Rachel to know she was a predator who'd stolen her twin sister's identity and tried to have her committed to psychiatric care. Rachel's friends abandoned her. Her professional reputation, what little she'd had, was destroyed. Her name became synonymous with one of the most disturbing identity theft cases in state history. Daniel and I tried to rebuild our relationship, but the damage was too severe. He'd been married to Rachel for 3 months, intimate with her, believing she was me. That betrayal, even though he'd been deceived, was something neither of us could fully overcome. We separated amicably. Daniel moved across the country, unable to cope with the trauma of having married the wrong twin. I reclaimed my job at Tech, but Rachel had done damage there. 2 missed deadlines, made poor decisions, and alienated clients. It took me 2 years to rebuild my professional reputation, but I made sure Rachel's punishment extended beyond prison. I contacted the prison administration and ensured Rachel's identical twin status was noted. Guards were instructed to never let her forget she was no longer Julia, that her identity theft had failed, that she'd spend decades as herself, the lesser twin she'd always hated being. I sent Rachel letters periodically, updates about my rebuilt life, my career success, my recovery, reminders that she'd failed to steal my identity permanently, that I'd reclaimed everything while she rotted in prison. 10 years after the identity switch, Rachel was 40, still imprisoned, her mental state deteriorating from the isolation and guilt. According to prison reports, she'd become obsessed with the idea that she was Julia, that the court had made a mistake, that she was the victim. The irony was, Rachel had tried to erase my identity, and now she couldn't accept her own. I was 40, thriving professionally, financially successful, and God rebuilt from the ashes of Rachel's betrayal. I'd created a life even better than the one she'd stolen. Some people suggested I should show mercy, visit Rachel, and help her get psychiatric treatment. I refused. Rachel had stolen 8 months of my life while I was comatose and vulnerable. She'd married my fiancé, damaged my career, and tried to have me permanently institutionalized. She'd caused the accident that put me in a coma in the first place. She deserved every moment of suffering she experienced. 15 years after the identity theft, Rachel was released on parole at 50. She came out broken, mentally unstable, unemployable, with a criminal record that ensured she'd never rebuild a life. She tried to contact me once, sent a letter claiming she'd changed, that she was sorry, that she'd been mentally ill when she'd stolen my identity. I sent the letter back with a note. You wanted to be me so badly you stole my identity while I was comatose. Now you'll spend the rest of your life being yourself, the failed, forgotten twin who destroyed her own life through jealousy. Enjoy living as Rachel forever. Rachel attempted suicide 6 months after release, devastated by debt, isolation, and the permanent loss of everything she'd tried to steal from me. She survived, but with permanent health complications. She lives now in assisted living, barely functional, supported by state assistance, her identity permanently marked by her crimes. I live in the apartment Rachel tried to steal, work the job she briefly held, carry the name she coveted. Everything she wanted is mine and always was. My twin sister stole my identity while I was in a coma. She married my fiancé, lived my life for 8 months, and tried to have me permanently institutionalized. I woke up, reclaimed everything, and ensured she spent the rest of her life paying for her attempt to erase me. Rachel wanted to be Julia so desperately that she committed crimes and destroyed lives trying to become me. Now she's stuck being Rachel, forever the failed twin who tried to steal her sister's identity and lost everything trying. And I make sure she never forgets it.